So everyone hates Claude's usage limits. I'm going to show you where to see your usage limits and a few things to do about them. Some suggestions straight from Claude as well as from a prolific Reddit user. And hopefully this will be helpful for you, and if you want to keep using Claude, to do so more effectively and with a little bit less pulling out of your hair. Let's get started. We're in Claude right now. This is the settings. You can find the settings from way down here in the bottom corner, that little place where your initials probably are. Then go to settings, and then right in the middle we have usage. This tells you your usage. However, it is a little bit funky because it says usage plan limits. And then it's got this sliding scale that people have already been complaining about because it seems to be acting bonkers for them, depending on your use case, depending on your message length, depending on the context window, depending on whether you're using projects and caching information and system instructions. There are a lot of variables that this will depend on. Your usage is going to increase more rapidly than other people's usage based on all those different factors that nobody is really, it's like those system error messages that people always say, copy all your system settings into the prompt on all these old forums to see what's actually happening in your computer. There's a lot of complaining going on, but there's not really any source of truth for what people are actually doing with Claude. Now, I'm going to get off my soapbox because I will concede Claude's usage is frustrating, and it has frustrated me as well. So that's the purpose of this video. I did a preliminary video that everybody got all up in arms about when the weekly limits first came out. And this is in a response to that, hopefully some helpful suggestions for folks. Now, the first thing we're going to do is start over in Claude support itself. And I'll leave a link to this stuff. If you haven't checked these out, I would encourage you to, because this is sort of straight from the horse's mouth. It's not going to be totally satisfying, I think, for some of you, but we do have some best practices that is updated by Claude. This article is updated 2 weeks ago as of the time of this recording. And there are different limits, of course, in different plans. So free users, let's talk to you first. Free users over here in this article, while using the free plan, there is a session-based usage limit that will reset every 5 hours. The number of messages you can send varies on demand, all that stuff that I just said. Very vague information here. You should not be surprised at all if you're a free user that you're going to be butting up against the usage limits Claude wants you to pay. Okay, if you don't want to pay, go use ChatGPT. Better yet, go use AI Studio by Google, which is still free to use right now and very powerful. I'll show you that at the very end. But if you don't want to pay for Claude, my first suggestion is kind of don't use Claude. I think that that's personally what I would do. I'm a pro user and I got the year plan, so I kind of got suckered into that, some of you might say, but it is a little bit cheaper for the year plan, unlike ChatGPT, which does not even offer a year plan. And so I did that, a couple $100 for a year. It kind of seemed like a good deal for me. Let me know if I'm just bonkers in the comments below. Feel free to disagree. For me, that was worth it. I have not upgraded to the max plan. We'll talk about the different plans here in just a second. But free users, usage limits, it's very vague by design. They want you to pay money. Claude is kind of the premium option here, in my opinion, for LL models. Now, let's go over to the Pro plan. All right, about Pro plan usage. Yes, we have usage limits. It offers at least 5 times the usage per session compared to our free service. Claude kind of reminds me of Apple comparing their own products to their own products when they do their feature-rich comparisons and using percentages or multipliers instead of actual data. So this is frustrating. We don't get actual data when we come over here and say, what do we need to be, like, what are our limits here? So even in this practically what do these limits mean section, it gives us some data, it gives us some numbers, approximately 200 English sentences, assuming your sentences are around 15 to 20 words and use a less compute insensitive model. So right out of the gate, I think that they're excluding Sonnet 4.5 from this discussion because that's a more extensive model. Definitely Opus because it's more extensive. You can expect to send around 45 messages every 5 hours, often depending on Claude's current capacity. This seems like not very much, but again, This is in the documentation. So this is what we're signing up for when we're going just for the pro plan, which is 20 bucks. Is that right? How much are these things now? Let's go to billing. Okay, yeah. So it's 17 a month billed annually, which is what I'm doing, which I think comes to 20 bucks a month if you do it just monthly. And then we'll talk about Max, like I said, here in a minute. Yeah, this doesn't seem like a lot. And people are hitting this limit a whole lot. It goes through the rationale behind the limits. Go ahead and read through that. Pause this video, go over to this site, whatever you need to. There are reasons. Ultimately, for me, I'm still okay with paying for this product because I do think it is a more powerful product than some of the other ones on the market right now for certain use cases. How to get the most value out of the Pro plan? All right, this is what we came here for. This is the Pro plan tips from Claude itself. Ask multiple questions at once, especially working with long documents. This runs a little bit counter to some of the advice that I have seen on the old interwebs, in that you should not ask multiple at once, but rather you should break it up and chunk it up. For ChatGPT, that can be an effective strategy. However, Claude is telling you the way Claude functions, you want to give it multiple questions at once. So this does not mean just throwing spaghetti at the wall. You need to be thoughtful in how you craft some of your prompts, but you do not need to just go one at a time, or you'll burn up more of your usage limits. This one is a common sense one. Don't re-upload your files. If you're re-uploading files in one conversation, stop doing that. You only need to do it once. Furthermore, as I'll mention here in a minute, or go into more detail in a minute, you need to be using projects if you are uploading documents. This is how I'm using them, rather. If I'm uploading documents to refer back to, for instance, a long contract or a long bit of code, a markdown file, some system instructions, some directions, something that I'm going to be referring back to throughout a lengthy chat or throughout multiple chats, you need a project for that. And I'll show you, I guess I'll show you like at the end of the video, and yell at me if I forgot to do that in the comments, but I'll show you how I set mine up and how I do it pretty efficiently, and how I even use ChatGPT or another AI model to come up with the system prompts for my Claude projects. Okay, so don't re-upload files. Should be common sense. I shouldn't have to tell you that. Use projects. All right, so their third point was exactly what I started saying. Use projects. And here's the rationale. When you add documents to a project, they're cached. What does that mean? Well, they're just taking the memory from that and they're putting it over here, kind of in the back of Claude's mind. Every time you reference that content, cache tokens count less than uncached portions toward your usage limits. This is interesting to me. I don't know how this works practically, but the fact that this works is very cool. And it's a shortcut if you haven't been using projects. It's very easy to just go in and start to write something inside these LLMs and just open up a new chat. And oftentimes that's the thing you need to do for just quick answers on quick things. But this is the shortcut that I hope you're using. More people need to do this. And I know not everybody is doing this yet, because you can cache all of the project data. Say you have a markdown file with say it's a 100-page file or something. I don't know, something huge. Maybe you're writing a book like people have commented on my previous videos, and you've got a chapter of that book. You don't need to throw that into chat. You need to throw that into the system instructions for a project so that you can refer back to it. Somehow these tokens in that form cost less, require less compute than in an uncached section. Okay, this means you can work with the same material repeatedly without using up your message quickly. That's what we just talked about. Couple tips there for the Pro plan. What about the Max plan? And we've got more tips here after I go through the Max and touching on the team from Reddit that I found as well. So for Max, again, we have this gradient of 5 times more usage per session than Pro, for this 5 times $100 as of right now per month fee. And they say this is ideal for frequent users who work with Claude on a variety of tasks. But then they have a 20 times more usage than Pro for a $200 price tag. The multipliers work in my head. The rationale for upgrading is obviously there, but it's a purely emotional thing. It's like these M1 and M1 Pro and M1 Max chips that Apple keeps coming out with these massive improvements based only and solely upon their previous generation and their previous chips. And it's good. It's obvious improvements, but in the real world, it doesn't mean a lot to me. They realize that, and they have this practically what do these limits mean sections on each of these articles. And they say, hey, you can expect for at least 225 messages on this max 5 times plan. Remember, that was when the sentence was like 15 to 20 words per sentence on average, and if you're using like a low intensive model. There's a lot of ifs there. It's a lot of leeway for them to limit you quickly and charge you more. For max 20 times usage, at least 900 messages every 5 hours. I'm still running into people commenting that are losing out or hitting their limits on these max plans. So these are not foolproof infinite limits. They're very much limits that people are hitting. If you expect to upgrade for $200 a month and you are a complete power user and maybe you're not doing projects correctly or at all, or you're doing a lot of back and forth and making real long chats and then going back and forth with code bases where you're having changes made in the artifact every time, you're going to hit context windows that are huge and you're going to still hit these limits, even though you're paying $200 a month. So they're not foolproof. You can't just keep throwing money at it. You're going to continue to hit a ceiling if you don't take some steps. Okay, here are some tips to maximize usage in the Max article. Start new conversations for each topic. And by the way, this is in the Max article, but this applies to free users and any users. This is things you can do. These are things you can do to improve your usage. Batch related questions together. Be mindful of attachment sizes as they impact usage limits. This is one that people really struggle with uploading a big Word document or a big PDF. They just think, oh, here's one document. So it's one bit of information or one small bit. But the size of these and the amount of data that is in them is crucial to your context windows. So if you don't need 50 pages of that Word document to reference, you only need like 10, then cut that down, save it as something new, and upload that to your project. Again, use projects to store documents instead of repeatedly uploading. Break large documents, as I mentioned, into smaller sections before uploading. Ask Claude to summarize key points that you can paste into a new chat when needed. This is one I'm not good at doing, but is going to be helpful when you start to really, you've been there, right? You've had a long chat and you've gone in a few different directions, which you know you shouldn't have, but you have. And now it's time to summarize that stuff, get it down into like a, again, for another project or just another chat window, a summary document or a copy and paste bit of instructions that you can throw into a new chat. Kind of resets everything and it keeps this long thing from bloating your context window and using too much of your usage. Regularly review and remove unnecessary text and images from your project knowledge. Also something that I could do better about. Sometimes if you are working in a project for a long period of time, and I have a couple of these for work where I've got several images, several guidelines for some marketing projects. I uploaded them 6 months ago, and I've uploaded more since then. It would do me well to go back and just remove or refine some of those older ones that are in there. How do usage limits work with Claude Code? I'm not going to really go into the Claude Code as much in this video. I'll link that down below. It opens up this article right here. But I will mention that in Claude Code, in this article, what happens when you hit your usage limits. So you can consider upgrading, obviously. You have a flexibility to go pay as you go with Claude Console. If you're a developer using Claude Code, you probably are more familiar with this stuff anyway, but there are pay as you go options for you so that you don't just completely stall out on a project that you have to be using tons and tons of Claude Code usage for. I'll leave a link for this in the description. Same thing with Team and with Enterprise. all of these will benefit from the instructions that we just went through, as well as the last ones I'm about to go through. So for team and enterprise, you're going to get tons more usage. This is beyond what I'm really worried about in this video. This is mainly for those like you and I that are just using either the free, the pro, or the max accounts for their own personal or work usages. But you get tons and tons. Look, even the context window goes up when you go into the team plan. In the enterprise plan, you got all sorts of sign-on security stuff that they add, different context windows available. It's, kind of a call us and we'll let you know how we can take all your money to get you on this type of situation. So the last thing we'll look at is this pretty interesting article, thanks to Remy Caster 1 for pulling this together. This is 6 months ago, but this should still stand up for some extra thinking on how to manage usage limits. The link for this is below if you want to check it out, troll the comments and see what people have been yelling at him about. But number one, this is not a continuous conversational LLM. So this is basically a warning, and you can read further up into this about those super long chat windows. You don't just need to keep going on and on and on and on in a super long chat like ChatGPT. So ChatGPT does do this pretty well, but you're going to start eating up your context window and your tokens much faster in Claude the longer those chats are. Number two, don't do everything at once. Break down your task into smaller ones and work your way up. This guy says almost all my chats are only 4 to 5 messages. Now that's kind of crazy to me, but this should be a target I think that we aim at. This is taking things to the extreme of what we've been talking about here with Claude. We do really need to just be doing small little bits at a time if we don't want to eat up our tokens as fast. So we go the step further than this continual conversation into just a couple sentences back and forth, and then boom, on to the next thing. Edit your messages instead of following up. Again, something that I rarely ever do, but I've seen this in multiple places. And let me show you what this is talking about. If you've got a chat here, you can come down here and you can say, edit this, and this will create a new conversational branch. You can switch between branches using the arrow navigation buttons. Okay. Also, give me an outline for this. I mean, I don't even know what this chat is about. So we're simply doing this for the sake of demonstrating what this branch is going to look at. So it's going to contemplate that, and we'll come back to it in a minute. For Pro and Max users, don't use project context, use MCP. Here's something that I don't do, but if you are a Pro or Max user, and I'm not yet, instead of the project context, use MCPs. So you can go in here and look through this guy's stuff and figure out what that means for you for these advanced use cases. But this is like the next level of, hey, if you really want to do things smart, go for MCP instead of only just projects. Now, if you're like me, projects are going to work for a long time. They're still working fine for me. Let's go back over here. Let's look at this outline that it just created. And now look up here. Just like, you know how in artifacts we have these little version 1, version 2 thing? This is the thing that I edited. This is the instruction I edited. And I can go back and forth in between the different responses between the two different versions of this request. There's a little hack. I bet you're not using this, and I bet it will help you out in the token department. Now let's talk about how to set up a project in Claude. I am going to open up a brand new window here, and I'm not going to go to Claude. I'm going to go to aistudio.google.com. I'm going to show you how you can use another AI model to produce a system prompt for Claude's projects. You can do this in Claude too, but you know what? I want to show you Google AI Studio just for the sake of this demonstration, and I'll walk you through just for like 2 seconds here, not to be overwhelmed by all this. On the left-hand side, we've got where our chat stuff lives. All these different items here are what you should be used to seeing from like ChatGPT and everywhere. That's where the chats are. Then we've got a bunch of other options that we don't need to fool with. Over on the right-hand side, this is a little bit different in how Google sets things up. We've got the models that we're using, the temperature settings, all the different settings for these individual chat. So if you come up here and click on this, you may have Nano Banana selected. That's their latest and greatest right now. I've got Gemini 2.5 Pro. These are all just models. Doesn't really matter a ton for what we're doing right now, but I would suggest Gemini 2.5 Pro or the Flash latest. I'm going to use the Flash latest. And then let's just start a prompt. We're not going to worry about all the other stuff. What we want here, the first step in our projects, is a good prompt. So write me a system prompt for a project in Claude that will be serving as editor for my fantasy sci-fi novel. This is going to spit out a nice huge prompt, and if we were thorough, we would read this and make sure it's what we need. But we're going to scan through it and just give you the basics of why this is a good practice when you're setting up a new project, whether you do this in Gemini, in ChatGPT, or in just a new chat in Claude. So it says what it is, a system prompt, role and expertise. It goes through this role. We can craft this, edit this if we need to. Genre and scope. It's a blend of fantasy and science fiction. Critique must prioritize internal consistency across these elements: world building, blend, pacing, and scope. Editorial focus pillars. So a lot of this you might not think of if you're just crafting a prompt. I know this is, a few hundred words, usually when I'm prompting, and even Claude's own instructions say to keep prompts concise. But usually we're not going to be this thorough and this well crafted. That is the advantage of having, and one of the big advantages of having an LLM model do this for us. I'm going to copy as text. Actually, I'm going to copy as Markdown because AI models really enjoy Markdown a lot. Now over in Claude, if you come to the right-hand side here, we've got projects. I want you to go to projects. We're going to create a new project. We're just going to call it Sci-5 Novel Editor. And then we're going to create this. Once we're inside of here, we've got regular chats. And so the way projects works, it's a folder type of hierarchy where you have your project right here. And then underneath here, all of these spaces can be filled up with different chats. So you have chat 1, chat 2, chat 3, as you start talking about different topics and asking the LLM about different topics. In each of those chats, you can select the model that you want to use. I'm going to select Haiku 4.5. But then the important part for what we're talking about here is instructions and files. So I have instructions and I can copy as Markdown, and we can actually paste those entire instructions right into the project instructions. The alternative way to do this, and please let me know if you consider one of these better than the other, but the alternative way to do this is to come in here, open up a new notepad, save this as prompt MD, and then under files, upload from device, and we can actually upload that Markdown file as one of the files of our project. And as you can see, it gives us some stats here. That's 62 lines and uses up 1% of project capacity. So we can have a bunch of files here depending upon their file size and the length of the material inside of them. This is how we set up a prompt. We can then come in here and say, outline a unique storyline for a short story in a new universe. Under 100 words, please. So I'm going to do a completely obnoxious prompt here because this is totally useless in the real world for this project, but check this response out. We gave it a completely bonkers prompt and it's saying, hey, you created me to be a speculative fiction development editor. Please give me the manuscript I'm supposed to be editing. So once you have your chapter 1, you would throw chapter 1 into a chat window here and then talk about editing chapter 1. I would then open up for subsequent chapters, new chats inside of the project so that you don't increase the context scope too much, the context window too much, that is. If this was helpful, let me know. Sign up for my newsletter in the description below. It's the first link down there. And you know the drill. It helps creators like me a whole lot if you just like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hope you have a great one. If you have more tips I didn't cover about this, would you throw them down in the comments? Because we would all benefit greatly from the collective knowledge of how to stop spending all our money on Claude. Thanks a lot.